Welcome into the show. This is Full Court Blitz. KJ McCurley alongside Alex Baumann. A lot to discuss, Alex. A lot to talk about, as always. An action-packed weekend of college football last week. And, hey, I got to tell you, we got a lot of good stuff to talk about for this week. We won't waste time today because we do have some interesting stuff lined up at the end of the show. We'll get more to that later. How about we start off with some SEC spotlight, two teams coming off of long weeks in LSU and Vanderbilt. Alex, our first spotlight game should be a good one. Good defense, good offense. What happens with LSU and Vandy?
It's a big week in the SEC. Every team plays. No one's on a bye week. All pretty good matchups in the conference. First one, like you talked about, KJ, number 10 LSU taking on number 17 Vanderbilt at Vanderbilt's house. Last week for LSU, ended up squeaking out against South Carolina. Pretty dominant defensive performance once again for the Tigers. Vanderbilt having an off week after the Alabama game. A rough showing in that second half for them not being able to score. KJ, you look at both these teams, LSU, we've noted their offensive struggles all year long. The defense has won them a lot of football games. Vanderbilt, their offense has shown they can be good at times, but what we saw against Alabama when Digapavia didn't have the running game to lean on and was forced to drop back and pass, he did struggle a lot, and the defense had some busting coverages here and there. You look at this matchup, do you think LSU's offense is able to get back on track against Vanderbilt, or is Vanderbilt just one of those teams that's going to pull off the upset here?
I think this is going to be a game that's decided in the fourth quarter. I don't really see either team really being able to establish what they want to do through two quarters. I could even see three quarters, a tough fight going on. But this is a game I think LSU, there's a lot of people riding LSU for pretty rough right now because you're a top 10 team. You flat out looked really bad on offense in several weeks. You are elite defensively. You do have a capable quarterback, but a lot of question marks for that offense. And each year that there's an offense that's kind of middle of the pack or you don't know what you're going to get, the good teams, they always find the games to show it. Like you're just kind of waiting on the moment. LSU fans have been waiting and waiting and waiting on offense. And, a bye week can be restful for a team at times, but I'm going to take the converse to be true. And I think that Vanderbilt is sluggish coming out of the gate. And I think LSU dominates this game defensively up front, makes Vanderbilt very uncomfortable, similar to Alabama. And as you noted, making pass heavy, the Commodores. I think LSU found a way to win this game going off of that formula Alabama created to stop Vanderbilt. And I'm going to take the Tigers in this one.
LSU turnovers have also been a problem last week against South Carolina. He had 2 interceptions by Garrett Nussmeier. And if you turn the ball over against Vanderbilt, they love to burn that clock. And they weren't able to do that as effectively against Alabama. But last year's game against Alabama, they burned so much time after forcing Jalen Milroe turnovers. And if Garrett Nussmeier does that in this game with Vanderbilt at home, I think that could spell an issue for the Tigers. But I do think LSU's defense is going to win them this football game just due to how elite it is, and it continually puts the offenses in position to win games, just like they did last week against South Carolina.
Yeah, when you're a defense and you can make somebody uncomfortable with what they'd like to do the most, you have the advantage, and that's how LSU's won games this year.
Next up, number 5 Ole Miss taking on number 9 Georgia, going between the hedges, and we're going to talk about Georgia a little bit later, KJ, with what transpired last week against Auburn. But going into this matchup, it's Trinidad Chambliss' first true road matchup in the SEC after coming over from D2 Ferris State. Georgia, pretty rough first half last week, was able to rebound in the second half. Same thing for Ole Miss, rough first half for them, was able to sneak out against Washington State. Do you think either of these teams is able to get back on track this week, or is it going to be another sluggish game?
I think both teams will get back on track. I look for both offenses to be ready to step up. I mean, you mentioned Washington State last week. Ole Miss just didn't get off the bus very well in the first half. Showed a lot of areas of improvement in the second half. I think Lane Kiffin's halftime talk probably wasn't very friendly for those Rebels, and they ended up getting the job done. But listen, man, this is a tricky Georgia team because we'll get more into last week's game with Auburn later, as Alex said, but Georgia doesn't have a lot of just sheer X and O talent that's not on offense, right? They don't have those multiple first rounders running around on defense.
No Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis.
No. There's nobody that can really scare offensive linemen for that team. I mean, they have guys that can make plays, but they don't have that guy, that Jalen Carter, that Roquan Smith, that just we are terrified of him. We got to double him, chip him, whatever we got to do. Georgia doesn't have that guy. And you talk about teams being ready. Ole Miss, I've said this all year long, Ole Miss has a very, very sour taste in their mouth after last year, being left out of the playoff. I think it was the right call to leave them out. I don't think they won enough games, but they felt like they had enough offensive firepower to maybe win a few things, possibly the whole thing. And I don't disagree. I think their offense last year was as advertised, and even though you lose Jackson Dart, you lose Quishon Judkins to the league, you reload, you go find this gem in Trinidad Chambliss, and you have playmakers at running back, playmakers at receiver. Lane Kiffin has a very good team, and I think this is going to be a game that Ole Miss gets the college football world paying back attention to them, and I think this is a good program building win for Lane Kiffin. I think the Rebels get the job done this weekend.
The issue with Kirby Smart and the Mike Bobo Georgia offenses has been getting out to slow starts. Going back to last year, the Alabama game, that's been the most notable one, is getting down as much as they did last against Alabama. This year did the same thing. Auburn last week, you got down 10-0, and honestly could have been down 17-0 if there was a few calls that were made or were not made properly. And if you get out to a bad start against Ole Miss, it's going to be rough to get back in the game against Lane Kiffin's offenses. They're not like Josh Heupel, where Josh Heupel takes his foot off the gas and lets you get back in a football game. Lane Kiffin is pedal to the metal. He's going to put up as many points as he wants to because he's got something to prove. He wants to talk about it on social media. He's already talking smack against Kirby Smart on social media this week.
And that was absolutely hilarious. I usually think coaches should step back, and I think Lane does too much sometimes, but that's why Lane is Lane. If you haven't heard the interview about what he said about Kirby Smart's physique, I encourage you to do so for a laugh. It's pretty funny.
And Georgia doesn't, like you talked about, KJ, doesn't have those guys on the defensive line or in the linebacker core where you're having to double and really worry about them on the edge. They have struggled creating pressure from that defensive line position. Same thing with Alabama this year. Alabama's done a little bit better. And if you're playing Ole Miss, you can't let Trinidad Chambliss sit back in the pocket for 5-6 seconds and make a decision. You have to be able to generate pressure on him because he's going to beat you either with his arm or his legs. Even though Lane Kiffin has a pretty poor road record in the SEC at 8-8 and hasn't won at Athens in his time at Ole Miss, I think this is the game where Ole Miss gets it right with a D2 quarterback leading him the way and the defense playing the way it's played, and they'll be able to beat Georgia this week. Next up, our last spotlight game, the third Saturday in October. Number 11 Tennessee travels to Bryant-Denny Stadium and takes on number 6 Alabama, coming off a big win against Missouri after Bo Perbula decided he was going to pass to the wrong player and ice the game for Missouri. KJ, Tennessee's had Alabama's number in the past few years. Do they have it again, or is Alabama's offense too much for them?
Alabama's offense is lethal, and Tennessee needs to be careful thinking that it's going to be the same lapses in protection. I think I don't remember the exact number, but I know in the Bryce Young Alabama versus Tennessee game, he was sacked at least 5 or 6 times. I don't think the offensive line has that bad of a lapse again. I don't think you're going to see this experienced unit look really bad. You talked about Formby. You talked about him at tackle a few weeks ago in the show for improvement, and he had a pretty rough game at times.
Yeah, it was rough
last week. This is a game for Alabama that I think comes down to that offensive line. You can't come in there against Josh Heupel defense in Tennessee. Granted, I know they've had some starters in and out of the lineup. They may not be as strong this year on defense, but they're still going to be well prepared. They're still going to be well coached. They're going to go for turnovers. They're going to try to strip the ball out. They're going to try to give their offense any any kind of life to let Joey Aguilar try to take advantage of that. And if you're Alabama, you just got to come in and be deliberate. I think deliberate is a good word for the Tide this weekend. Don't shy away from what you like to do. Yes, we know Ty Simpson has been really, really good, but you know what else has been good for Alabama the last few weeks that nobody's really talking about? Very quietly by committee, they've been pretty decent running the football. They don't do it a whole lot compared to other teams, but when they do, most of the time it's gone for 4 yards, for 5 yards. And when you start getting your offense ahead of the chains in a tough road environment, it always helps. I like Alabama's running game in this game to kind of be the difference. I think Tennessee is going to be ready to bring the heat on Ty Simpson. And if this offensive line and running back field can come ready to play and Kalen DeBoer gives them their chances, I think they can get a little bit of push, get some yardage when they need to, and I think they can do enough on offense to get a tough road victory in Knoxville.
You know what Josh Heupel's offense is going to be after the 2 years of Nico last year and Joey Aguilar this year is he's going to use the run game to set up the pass, and he's going to test you vertically up and down the field. And Alabama has shown some weaknesses defending the run, but the last 2 weeks, the second half against Vanderbilt and then last week against Missouri, did an excellent job defending the run game, held Vanderbilt to under 20 rushing yards in the second half, under 30 rushing yards in the second half. And then against Missouri, held Ahmad Hardy to under 60 rushing yards, one of the best running backs, if not the best running back in the country. If you're able to do that and shut down Tennessee's run game, which did have a pretty good game last year against Alabama, and force Joey Aguilar to beat you with his arm, I'm not sure Joey Aguilar has the arm talent to go out there and sling it around the football field and beat Alabama. He has a weapon in Chris Brazzell, who's one of the best receivers in the country. They just don't have the plethora of weapons to be able to beat a defensive backfield for Alabama that has played pretty well and is one of the best pass defenses in the league by ratings. I think Alabama gets this win due to it being at Bryant-Denny Stadium and avoiding the curse of Neyland Stadium, which has been a thorn in Alabama's heel for the past 2 times going there. So I'll take the Crimson Tide here, using the defense to set up the offense like they have the past couple of weeks. Moving on from our SEC spotlight, KJ talking about our upset alert. Which SEC team should be on upset alert this weekend? There's a lot of good matchups.
I'm going to take the team that we just talked about, a good matchup, Georgia and Ole Miss. I know on paper it may not be considered a real upset because Ole Miss, I think, is ranked ahead of Georgia, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
They are
5-9.
Just making sure. Ole Miss is ranked ahead of Georgia, but a lot of people still consider Georgia a really heavy favorite in the SEC. I think this is going to be a really good contest. I don't think a lot of people are really thinking Ole Miss is going to win. I think people are looking at this game saying, oh, this is the game that Ole Miss becomes Ole Miss again. And I just don't know. I think Ole Miss, they're fired up. You get this guy in Trinidad Chambliss who was not the starter. I mean, people forget about Austin Simmons, very highly touted kid, just didn't pan out. And in comes, we talked about Trinidad Chambliss, but it's not just him, okay? I mean, these guys have weapons. Lane Kiffin is deep on offense. And I think on defense, they're sneakily good just enough to get out of situations. And I think the Bulldogs are going to be upset this weekend. I know the rankings won't tell you that's an upset, but I think Georgia feels confident that they're going to win, and I just don't think it's going to happen.
The team I have on upset alert this week is actually going to be the Texas A&M Aggies. Since 2013, the Southwest Classic has been held at AT&T Stadium outside of the 2020 COVID year, but now it's moving to a home-and-home, Arkansas. If they held onto the football for their last couple of games against Ole Miss, Memphis, and then last week against Tennessee, they fumbled 3 times against Tennessee. If they held onto the football in those games, I think they beat those 3 opponents, and we're looking at an entirely different Arkansas team. Sam Pittman's probably not fired. You're in the top 25 at that point. And last week against Tennessee, I really do think they had them on the ropes. And if you're able to play Tennessee that way, I think you'll have a good shot beating Texas A&M. A&M, I'm not sold on Marcel Reed as a quarterback. He still misses a lot of easy throws, and he still misses some deep balls similar to what Jackson Arnold struggles with at Auburn. And the defense, while it's been elite the past few weeks, are they going to be able to be elite against an offense that I think is underrated in the country? Taylon Green and Mike Washington are 2 of the best running players in the SEC. You have great weapons at receiver. And if Arkansas is able to take advantage of Texas A&M's defense, I think they could have A&M on the ropes again. I don't think it's going to live out to fruition, but Arkansas is going to give them everything they can handle, just like they did Tennessee last week.
I think that's a good call. Arkansas has lost 4 games this year by a touchdown or less. That's probably the most in the SEC, if I had to guess. I don't think anybody's came close to that much close losses, but they have been in a lot of games, and you keep getting close in those close affairs, you're eventually going to see one go in the W column, so that's a good call.
And A&M is actually 10, 21, and 2 on the road in this series, and they're playing at in Fayetteville, Arkansas. It could be spell of trouble for the Aggies.
Yeah, very well could. Also, wouldn't be surprised at all to see a really tight affair between Texas and Kentucky. I know Texas got a huge win in the Red River rivalry. It's an emotional game. Had a few guys in and out of the lineup. Still don't know if it's good John Mateer, if he's 100% yet. You just don't know. Kentucky, one of those teams that runs the ball and plays good defense. If Texas is unable to get anything, you might want to keep your eye on that one too.
Next up, the Blitz picks, going through the rest of the SEC matchups, starting with number 14, Oklahoma taking on South Carolina. South Carolina looking like they're going to be a dud this year, sitting at 3-3. I called it when the year started, was called the madman for saying that, but I guess I'm not a madman anymore. KJ, is South Carolina able to get back on track, or is Oklahoma going to get the better of them?
I think Oklahoma definitely wins this game. I just don't see there being any way South Carolina can, A, move the ball on Oklahoma's defense, but B, I just don't know where the points come from for South Carolina. I mean, you have to move the ball, you have to score in the red zone, and they really haven't displayed much consistent ability to do that. I don't think there's any way South Carolina wins this game. I think Oklahoma wins pretty handedly.
South Carolina's offensive line can't block. You fire your offensive line coach this week. You got called for 5 pre-snap penalties against LSU last week, reminiscent of Auburn against Oklahoma. The offensive line has given up so many sacks. He was sacked. Norris Sellers was sacked 5 times last week. He's number 2 in the SEC, having been sacked 19 times, only second to Jackson Arnold's 21. And you don't want to be close to Jackson Arnold in about anything except maybe turnovers. And that this is not only an issue with Norris Sellers protecting him. Back to Spencer Rattler's days, he was one of the most sacked quarterbacks in the country. That was the big issue for them during Rattler's time at quarterback. He was an uber talented quarterback, but his offensive line couldn't block for anything. And that's going to be an issue going against Oklahoma's defensive line, which is one of the best in the country. I talked about it last week, their ratings and defensive stats, their first, second, top 5 almost in every important stat category. And going against South Carolina, whose offense couldn't move anything if they wanted to, I don't think Norris Sellers is going to get back on track this week. And honestly, Shane Beamer's seat might be getting a little hot there in South Carolina.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good call. I mean, South Carolina, since he's taken over, they haven't even came close to representing the East. They haven't came close to a second place finish in the East, and you may not beat Georgia, but you got to win every now and then against those other eastern sided teams of the SEC.
Next up, talked about it a little bit ago, KJ, number 4, Texas A&M taking on Arkansas. Are you with me thinking that Arkansas has a chance here, or is A&M just too hot right now?
I absolutely think Arkansas has a chance. I think not disrespecting the talent Texas A&M has. I'm not a huge believer in Marcel Reed in terms of down the field, but I do love their running back core. They have excellent running back production. Defense has been up and down. I just think they may be a little bit overrated for that number 4 spot. I think they've won against a few good teams, and that has the media. You know how that goes.
Don't get me started.
Yeah. But I absolutely think this is a game that Arkansas can stay in. I mean, you alluded to taking the big play away from Marcel Reed and making them one-dimensional. If Arkansas can stop the run, and if they can capitalize on any A&M mistakes and score if they're in the red zone, I think this is a day that Arkansas could see as a happy one. They've had a lot of close, tough losses this year, but I think that could definitely be one to circle.
One thing Arkansas is going to have to do this game is tackle. Mario Craver and KC Concepcion are 2 of the best receivers in the country when it comes to yards after the catch. If you're able to tackle those guys, you'll be set up for something good, and as well as stopping the running game, because Le'Veon Moss and Reuben Owens and those guys there have run rampant the past couple of games. and that's going to be a big issue for Arkansas, stopping that run as well as the yards after the catch. I just think A&M's a little much right now, but I would not be surprised if Arkansas is able to pull off the upset at their home stadium. Next up, two unranked SEC teams, Mississippi State and Florida. Mississippi State coming off a bye, and Florida coming off that tough loss last week. Is Mississippi State too much, or is Billy Napier once again going to save his job?
I think Mississippi State might be a little bit too much this week. I like Florida, but, you saw that viral clip and that everyone saw, or most everyone, of quarterback DJ Lagway, expletive are we calling? And, I think most Florida fans and college football spectators can agree with that. There's been a lot of times this year where we've looked at something that Florida's done and like, huh? I mean, the clock management in week 2 is a huge reason that they lost to South Florida.
Yeah.
They were in a huge position to clinch the game versus South Florida, and now they've had a great year, but these are winnable games outside of the SEC. So the frustration setting in against Billy Napier is real. Yes, he did knock off a huge upset against Texas just a few weeks ago, and Florida fared pretty good against Texas A&M for 2.5 quarters. This is just a game that I think Mississippi State is going to get up for. I think they've had a lot of games this year that they feel like they should have won. And other than Arizona State, they've not really had much of an opportunity to beat a really good team other than, of course, the Tide. And I just think that this is a game that Florida is going to have a little tough time getting over that hump. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the Bulldogs win. Should get a really good contest, though.
Being in the swamp, Florida's going to use that to their advantage, just like they did against Texas. I think the Gators get the better of Mississippi State, even though I'm a huge Mississippi State fan this year with the way they're playing, winning football games after a 2-10 year last season.
Get the ball to Dallas Wilson. Florida, if you want to win, just get the ball to this guy.
Number 21, Texas traveling to Kentucky. KJ, you mentioned that as a possible upset due to how Texas is playing this season. But are you a true believer in that pick?
I never said they'd win. I said don't be surprised to see it be close. I do think Texas probably has enough. Kentucky's offense is just abysmal. I mean, if you looked at Auburn's offense and took away all of the positive plays, the 8 or 9, you'd get Kentucky. And I think this game against Texas, they're just not going to have enough on offense. I think Texas does get the job done, but a slow offensive start for Arch, again, would not surprise me on the road in Lexington.
Texas figured out something last week offensively. I know they didn't put up the points, but it looked like Arch got some confidence back. Some of the players got their confidence back. You had some special teams players make some plays. Ryan Niblett running that punt return back. Your defense played better after a pretty putrid performance the previous week against Florida. Texas is figuring it out at the right time, and they're going to beat Kentucky.
Yeah, the big thing you mentioned up front, both sides of the football played well last week, didn't play well against Florida, and that's the difference.
They're one of those teams where they realize their back's against the wall. You already have 2 losses. You can't afford to lose a third one. Even though that would be your second loss in the SEC, you're behind the 8 ball, making the SEC championship as well as the playoff. Because as we saw last year, 3 losses, you're not guaranteed anything. The last game of the slate, KJ, as I call the Freeze's final stand, number 16 Missouri, in their first road game of the season, travels to the Plains to take on your Auburn Tigers.
Well, but it's kind of a catch-22. Like I want to get excited when I'm previewing Auburn, but it's a little bit tough right now. I will get excited about effort. I was really excited to see effort from a few players last week that been kind of waiting on to really show up and emerge. And we've seen good games and good individual plays from Cam Coleman, but I really thought Saturday was one of his better showings as a Tiger, despite being able to do so much more damage, but the rest of the offense just not executing. You saw Cam Coleman blocking for the run game. The few times that we used the running game, it really boded well. And I just keep circling this. Offensive line, circle number 1. Running back usage, circle number 2. And play calling patterns, circle number 3. If you circle all three of those things and there's a green check beside them at the end of the day, Auburn wins this game. If not, then no. And, I was asked my opinion on the Georgia game, and it was something very similar. It come down to three areas: offensive line play, running back production, and is the play calling pattern is going to be deceitful enough, and is the defense going to tackle? Defense showed you they're going to tackle 9 times out of 10. I mean, a few misses here and there, but the Auburn defense is really strong. They've been the only reason that we've been in the games that we've been in so far. I think that rings true. I think the defense comes out at home against Missouri with a lot to prove. I think they do enough to get in Bo Pribula's way and slow him down, and I think Auburn's offense does just enough for now to keep Hugh Freeze employed, and I think Auburn finds a way to get a close win. I'm really trying to speak this into existence. I'm really trying.
Every week you try to speak it into existence.
I try. Hey, look, all we can do is try, and all I can ask Hugh Freeze to do is to try not to have the same patterns over and over, because if I can call it from Magnolia Drive on my couch, I think the guys across the line of scrimmage in the game can call it too. Just have some fun, be a little deceitful, and mix things up a little bit. Use your running backs. Damari Alston not with the team. Please feed Jeremiah Cobb. Use Omar Mabson. You recruit 5 running backs for a reason. Use them. If you do that, I think Missouri might be in a little bit of trouble. Might get a second consecutive loss. I think Auburn finds a way to win a close one.
Being Missouri's first road game can't be understated. Bo Pribula to be his first road game as a starter at Missouri. Ahmad Hardy's never played in this environment. A lot of defensive players haven't either. And the Plains is a hard place to play. As a Bama fan that's been there for 2 Iron Bowls, the past 2 Iron Bowls at Jordan-Hare Stadium, that's a tough place to be in as an opposing team. And being your first road test, I don't know if Missouri's going to be able to handle it. Auburn, if you get your offense playing like it did in the first half, granted, you got some issues with the referees that need to be fixed. If you play that way, you're able to continue playing that way into the second half and not get fazed by if a mistake is made or if a call doesn't go your way. Just continue to play the way you've played. Lean on that defense that has been elite all year long. Auburn will be good in this football game beating Missouri, and I think they do that this week because Bo Pribula is not the best quarterback in the world. And if you take away Ahmad Hardy, I'm not sold on him to be able to lead an offense up and down the field against Auburn's defense. In the hot seat, KJ, I think we're pretty clear on, we can both agree on who's in the hot seat this week. Auburn coach Hugh Freeze. I'm just going to give you the floor here, KJ. Freeze in 31 games, 14-17 with 5-14 record in the SEC. Harsin was 9-12 and 4-9 in conference games. Harsin has a higher win percentage in the SEC, a lower one when it comes to out-of-conference games. These guys are compared a lot. Hugh Freeze is a better recruiter, but it feels like Brian Harsin's a better in-game coach. Who do you think is able? Do you think Hugh Freeze is on the hot seat this week?
I think it's starting to burn a little bit. I'm not on the train of if we lose to Missouri, he's gone. I think that might be a little too far out in front, especially given the history of Auburn. I mean, you got to remember, Auburn is still having to pay not just Brian Harsin. We're all not even done paying Gus Malzahn. And Gus Malzahn is sitting happy at Florida State right now. Listen, we said before the year that, okay, Hugh, you've got your recruiting class. Okay, Hugh, you've got your quarterback or the transfer portal. All right, Hugh, you've got running backs. All right, Hugh, you've got receivers. How many times did we before the season with different things say, all right, Hugh, this is better. What's your excuse now? It's to that point to where like, okay, this is better. This is better. This is better. Probably about the only thing that you can say is not better since Hugh Freeze has been to Auburn as far as like depth that Brian Harsin had. As you mentioned the recruiting. Now, I don't want to, take everything away from Hugh Freeze because Brian Harsin would have never came close to getting Cam Coleman. Brian Harsin would have never came close to getting anybody that is starring on our defense right now. It just wouldn't have happened. This guy was losing in-state products. Sylvester Smith was told by Brian Harsin that they were not interested when Sylvester wanted to play at Auburn. and walks on for Hugh Freeze, and a few years later is a sure-handed tackler on the back end. So the recruiting, nobody's questioning that. But the in-game side of things, how can you not? At this point, how can you not? How can you not look around and see Cam Coleman, a specimen that if he was on Alabama or if he played for the Bulldogs in Georgia, imagine Cam Coleman's stats. Imagine how players would be if they were utilized in the best possible overall way. I think that for me, wins and losses are one thing, but to go along with wins and losses, players are not getting better when they get to school. You go to school to get better for the NFL. You don't go to school to make money. You don't go to school to get out there and mess around. You go to school to get better and to get a degree. And if you don't finish a degree, that's your business. But when you're there, traditionally it was, I know things have changed since you and I have really started following the sport with NIL, but when you're there to get better, right? And it's up to the coaching staff to push you and put you in those positions. And the bottom line is Hugh Freeze is not putting this team in the best positions. Damari Alston's off the team. There's whispers about, team violations. I think Hugh Freeze worded it as didn't meet our standards of quality for the program.
Failed to meet the expectations and standard of our program. Exact quote.
Okay. You can sit there and you can say that, but here's what I'm going with. You have two running backs in Jeremiah Cobb and Damari Alston who going into week 3 were both each averaging 4 yards a carry. Jeremiah Cobb was the only one that was even thought about being looked at other than a few times. How can a player in this NIL state have that happen to them and have Damari Alston's talent and not think to himself, well, grass is greener? I'm not saying that's the case, but Hugh Freeze, you're not helping yourself out. These kids are going to go run for some more playing time and some more money. If the kid's good enough to play, he needs to play. This whole freshman, this whole class shouldn't matter. And he started Cam Coleman as a freshman, so there's that. But, the big thing for me where I really lost respect for the coaching staff is Xavier Chaplin not being benched. And not just because this guy was making mistakes. The worst part of that is you have a capable guy practicing just as hard, not getting his chance. And that guy can just so easily go in the portal. And you're starting to see that with Damari Alston being off the team. You can call it mutual. I'm not buying that. Hugh Freeze is on the hot seat. I'm not saying it's on Saturday, but if you don't find a way to win this game, people are going to start thinking, and people are going to start really talking about swapping out another few bad years and a lot of millions to have you off the team. Auburn did it with Harsin. They did it with Gus when they were fed up. The boosters are going to get fed up at some point, and you just have to be better. You just have to be better. You can't. You called the percentages. You've got to beat your rivals more than two times out of every 7 years was what we said with Gus. Well, now it's 0 out of every 4 years, and you just can't keep a job in a place like Auburn for very long doing stuff like that.
It's getting harder and harder to support Hugh Freeze as a coach. He's 2-8 in one-possession games, 1-11 against ranked teams, and 9-9 at Jordan-Hare Stadium. And that, like I talked about earlier, it's one of the toughest places to play in college football. He hasn't been able to use the talent and capitalize on having these 2 back-to-back top 10 classes and win football games. And I'm tired of hearing the excuses, he's having to use Harsin's guys. Look at Kurt Cignetti at Indiana. He made the playoff last year. He's going to make the playoff this year unless they absolutely crumble in the last few games of the season. Hugh Freeze has had better incoming talent. He spent more money on his roster, and he still can't win football games. It's not a lack of talent. It's a lack of ability to coach.
Yep.
He coached. I thought he coached his best game of his career in the first really quarter against Georgia. And it felt like after that, his play sheet just disappeared, and he went back to the same 5 formations and 6 plays out of those formations that he had run the whole season that everybody knew was coming.
And I think as a coach, sometimes when circumstances are as bad as they were, you get focused on that and forget to coach. I think that's exactly what happened. And I get it. Trust me, as a fan, I more than understood sitting there watching. We'll get into it later, but sitting there watching some of the things that transpired. But your job is to coach. Your job is to develop and to put kids in the right position. Your job is not to be upset at the official.
Auburn fans can officiate, blame the Oklahoma game, and official game, blame the Georgia game. But you still had chances to win those games. Yep. You were up 10-0 against Georgia and went into halftime up 10-3. You had chances to beat Oklahoma. Your defense put you in positions to beat Oklahoma. Your offense just couldn't move the football.
Yep.
So I don't want to hear the excuse of, oh, man, the officials did this and that. Sure they did. Sure they messed up a few calls. The officiating crew that did it for the Georgia game, I don't think they should be able to officiate another game this season the way that was worked. But that's not the reason you lost the game. You lost the game because in the second half you couldn't move the football, and your defense was tired because Georgia's on the field 95% of the half, felt like.
Time of possession flipped upside down.
Yep. Hugh Freeze, it's the same thing week in and week out. Your defense plays great, and your offense can't move the football. You ignore the running game. I don't blame Damari Alston for leaving. It's felt like he's just been shoved to the side, and same with Jeremiah Cobb. I wouldn't be surprised if this week the running game doesn't go well and you lose the game, that Jeremiah Cobb's, you know what, I'm out. If you're not going to use me, why stay here when I can go to another program that's going to give me 10, 15, 20 carries a game and help me get better and maybe get a chance at an NFL roster? Because Hugh Freeze right now, Jeremiah Cobb and Damari Alston, they could be the next Bo Jackson, and they're not being utilized. So why would you stay there? Hugh Freeze, it's infuriating. I hate it for Auburn fans because the state of Alabama is better when Auburn's better at football, and you can go to the Iron Bowl and expect it's going to be a shootout. It's not great when you look at Auburn and you're like, oh, here's another game Auburn's going to lose. Oh, here's a game I get to watch Jackson Arnold throw 3-yard dig routes or a 3-yard out route and not be able to complete it. Oh, there's Xavier Chaplin again, not being able to learn the snap count. It's awful to watch, and I feel for you, KJ, as an Auburn fan. I feel for other fans around the state of Alabama because Hugh Freeze has made this offense unwatchable.
I've been asked several times, "How are you as an Auburn fan?" I'm sure you're fed up. I bet the mood wasn't good at the house. No, not while it happened. But here's the thing: at the end of the day, all of this stuff, it's just superficial. It's a game, and I don't put my stock in sports. You don't either. We put our stock in working hard and going home. But yeah, when you follow a team, you can't help but to get fired up with what you saw. But you're exactly right. And I said that same thing against Oklahoma. I'm not an excuse-making fan. The refs gypped us with the illegal play against Oklahoma, and it shouldn't have happened. But you also gave up 10 sacks. Georgia, yeah, definitely a touchdown. And I don't know, Georgia fans, how many beers is what I have to say, because for you guys to say that that's blatantly a fumble, you must not know blatantly, or you drank so many that you just couldn't keep up. I don't know, but that was definitely a touchdown. But again, the second half, you fell asleep. You had a lot of penalties. Defense was exhausted because the offense couldn't sustain a drive. So nobody to blame but Hugh Freeze. He's definitely on the hot seat. And if you get embarrassed and you don't win next week, I think it could be it. And I just don't think it's going to happen this week. I think we're going to play well. I think the kids are tired of losing. But Hugh Freeze, you better start keeping your players on the field that need to be on the field, or Damari Alston's going to happen again. I don't buy the breaking our stand. I don't buy that. You can miss me with it. I'm an Auburn fan through and through, but I'm not gonna stand for that. I think that this coaching staff just doesn't have gonads right now in character. And I think for Auburn to be relevant again, for the state football to be relevant again, both of those need to come up and fast.
Let's step aside from the Hugh Freeze and talk about the on the rise KJ.
Thank you for changing the subject. I felt my blood pressure going doop, doop, doop.
Well, it's about to go up again after we talk about this and move on to our That's Tougher, That's Enough. But the player, coach, or team that has shown improvement over the last couple of weeks, who's your player that's on the rise, KJ? It's getting tougher and tougher as the season goes on because every player, it feels like, is already on the rise.
Yeah, these guys are all in midseason form, no doubt about that. But as a guy that was a little bit critical on Georgia, and I'm not super. I still don't like Georgia. I don't like Kirby Smart, but one guy that really impressed me is for them is the quarterback. I mean, what was Georgia's passing game supposed to be like before this season? What did everybody say? Oh, it's just going to be the running game. It's just going to be the running game.
There are people saying he's going to be benched midseason for the backup because they didn't believe in him.
Yeah, and this has just been him managing the game at its best. Kirby has done a really good job, I think, of simplifying the passing game. They have really good running back production, and they have a pretty solid defense in some cases. They lack the alpha dogs, but the passing game has just been off the chain for Georgia. At times they've done enough, and I mean, he's even used his legs. He's even used his legs at times. So I am for the on the rise pick. I am taking
Gunnar
Stockton.
I talked about this guy in week 2 of the season. Lottie Brooks, the Bama receiver, talked about him when he came out with ULM game. Had an outstanding performance there. And last week against Missouri, Ryan Williams dealing with his head injury he suffered the previous week. Felt like he was a decoy out there, didn't catch a single pass. Jeremy Bernard was held in check for a majority of that game, and it fell on Lottie Brooks' shoulders to go out there and make plays. And that's exactly what he did. You can talk about the catch in double coverage, the catch on the 4th down play that ended up winning Alabama the football game on the 4th and long, going to the sideline, toe tapping with the guy on his back. Helmet came off after the catch was made, still able to do it. He continually made big plays for Alabama as a true freshman receiver who's undersized. He's 5'10", 5'9". And to be able to make those plays, and for Ty Simpson and Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb to have the confidence in him to call those plays and give him the football in those moments, shows me that he is on the rise, not only in that coaching room on that roster, but for fans as well. It's super exciting to be able to see guys like Jeremy Bernard and Isaiah Horton and Ryan Williams play good, but to know that you have guys like Lottie Brooks and Rico Scott behind them that can make just as good as plays as those guys allows Ty Simpson, Ryan Grubb, and Kalen DeBoer to sub in guys in and out and not have to worry about some conditioning. So Lottie Brooks is on the rise, and next year I'm excited to see what he can do with some more PT with Jeremy Bernard gone.
You just have to love undersized receivers. If you're able to run routes, you can be a good receiver no matter your height. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have more on Full Court Blitz right after this.
Switching things up a little bit here, bringing us in from the break. KJ, it's time for That's Tough or That's Enough, where we talk about some things and decide whether it's tough or we've had enough of it. Let's start off with the big elephant in the room, Kirby Smart, head coach of the Georgia Bulldogs. Don't know if he's calling a timeout or not yet, but we're still waiting. KJ, do you think Kirby Smart's tough, or have you had enough of him?
I'm going to ask a question here, Alex. I'm going to just open with a question. Why would a college football coach run, not jog, not walk, but sprint to an official making a hand gesture if you were just clapping? Why would I, when my team's on the field in the middle of a very important down, why would I run up to a ref and clap? I'll wait for an answer. If Georgia fans have an answer, if anyone has an answer, I'll be here till the cows come home or the fat lady sings. Take your pick. Kirby was not calling a timeout, and I'll just to then double down and lie about it. It was just kind of weird to me. Like, if I'm a player, like, yeah, I'm glad that we didn't get penalized, but man, they gave us our timeout back, and this guy's up here lying about it. I mean, I don't know. That was really tough as a spectator for the game too, not just an Auburn fan, but of course I'm really fired up in the moment. Not just that, but Kirby he makes these little snide remarks here and there through the years, and I know you know what I'm talking about.
I do. Being a Bama fan, I've heard him.
There's just that thing about him, like you hear the saying, irks the nerves like fingernails on the chalkboard. When I see Kirby, when I hear Kirby talk, and then when I watch him call a timeout to say that he was clapping, it's really hard for me to not get really, really upset. And I sent you that GIF of him earlier today. I probably made you laugh. I think for that one, based off of his logic from last Saturday, the trending GIF of him running to the ref. I wonder if he was just running to tell the ref something, not to be upset at the ref in that GIF. I don't know. Judging off that GIF, judging off last weekend, I've had enough of Kirby. I think he's just too much. He does too much. That's what I'm going with. That's the nice way of saying it. He does too much for me. I've had enough, and that's it. I think Auburn should have definitely won the game, and I think Kirby wanted any advantage he could have. How, as a football fan, Alex, else are we supposed to sit there and watch what happened other than to say he just wanted a free timeout?
He got a lot of them in that Auburn game.
Oh yeah.
Not just because it was him, but because the officials had to go to the replay booth every play. We go to the replay booth to review a catch, and somehow K and Lee gets ejected for targeting. I don't know how we go to the replay for one thing and end up with another thing. I would just like some clarity on that from the SEC officials.
And the flag was never thrown before that for targeting.
And I can sit here and spend 30, 40 minutes talking about targeting and how it's one of the worst penalties in sports.
Amen.
I agree that it needs to be called because we're protecting players, but I disagree with how it's called. It's so inconsistent and so opinionated. One thing's targeting in one game, and the next game is not targeting in the other game. I look at the Auburn game where it was in the third quarter, your dad was showing me earlier this week, where the receiver is going down with the football, and Georgia's player comes in leading with his helmet, leaves his feet, and goes into the neck of the Auburn player. Wasn't called.
And by definition, that's all 4 quotas for targeting in one play.
Yes.
There you have it.
And then against Missouri, Jam Miller, the safety comes in, leads with his helmet. It looks like, to me at least, now people are saying he led with his shoulder, but to me it looked like he was leading with his helmet and hits Jam Miller in the helmet, and he's out with a concussion and maybe out this weekend. And then I have the previous week against Vanderbilt, the week before Vanderbilt's game, where James Smith's ejected for targeting on a play that's made almost every down where he's coming to just tackle a player. He's ejected for targeting and misses the first half of the Vanderbilt game. It's so opinionated when it's called. And Kirby Smart feels like he gets the benefit of the doubt, not only on targeting plays, but just like every game. It's almost like the Nick Saban treatment. Being a Bama fan, I know what it's kind of like.
What did it for me over the top was that the refs gave him back the timeout.
That's not a Kirby Smart thing when it comes to giving him back the timeout. That's the official's mistake.
I know. That's what really blew my mind is that not only did he get away with it, but we're giving him the timeout back. I mean, this is why Kirby is doing these things, because he knows you're going to adhere to him. It's just hard for me to watch what happened and not think that certain coaches don't spend a little more to pick officials, if you know what I'm getting at.
And we haven't got any clarity from the SEC officiating office of that game, really. There has been an explanation, an apology, anything to any sort of fan base or team or nothing. It's been silent. And I want you to think about if the tables were turned, if Hugh Freeze had made a mistake and called out the referees, or Kirby Smart had called out the referees, he'd be fined. He'd be in deep trouble with the SEC officials' office, and he'd had to apologize and explain himself. But the SEC officials can make mistakes left and right, cost teams football games, even though I disagree a little bit on that regard, but they still cost points and downs and distances, and not have to be held accountable. I hate it. As officials in college football, not only in the SEC, there's no accountability. I think the ACC has done the best job with this when it comes to you watch a football game, even though it's on the CW, You can hear the officials talking to the guys in the replay booth about what's being called. You can hear, oh, yeah, I see this there, this there. This is why I'm making that call. The SEC, you have no clue. It's just, well, we reviewed the play. Kayin Lee's ejected for targeting. Where was the targeting? You didn't even go to review for it. Can we get an explanation? No. We're just going to the next play. That's the biggest gripe I have with SEC officiating and officiating as a whole in college football is a lack of clarity on things and a lack of accountability for the people that make the calls.
Yeah, no question.
I know I got a little bit of a tangent there and it was a little bit of focus on Kirby Smart, and I think he's tough, but I've had enough of some of the antics he's been doing.
Yeah, and what you allow will continue. So when the refs are doing things like that, you can expect coaches to push the limits and push the boundaries. No doubt about that. Going on to our next tougher enough point, and Alex, I really spent some time on this one thinking about what I read, and it's something to think about. Want you to consider this. Baker Mayfield, quarterback for the Buccaneers, 5-1. His former team, the Browns, 1-5. Daniel Jones, former quarterback for the New York Giants, his 5-1. His former team, the Giants in the Big Apple, 2-4. Sam Darnold, 4-2. The Jets are currently 0-6. Alex, I'll let you start with this one. Do NFL teams give up on quarterbacks too soon sometimes? Have you seen enough of this, or is it still tough to bring a guy home slowly and then just blame him when things go bad?
I've had enough of teams giving up on quarterbacks and blaming them after even one season. I look at Josh Rosen in Arizona, where he's drafted in the first round one year, and he has a pretty poor year his rookie season, and they draft Kyler Murray first overall the next year, and Josh Rosen's out of the league in, what was it, maybe 2 years? You ruined his career. Now, he didn't help himself with some of the posts he made on social media and comments he made. But teams give up on players way too soon because they see the next shiny object, and they're like, oh, that's my guy, got to go get him. Baker Mayfield, the Browns have been a dumpster fire for decades. Being able to leave that team has helped him out a lot. Baker Mayfield was able to leave the Browns and become a better player because it was such a toxic environment to play in. He had no help on that team, and going to play for Sean McVay when he did in those last few games of the season, I think gave Baker Mayfield a lot more confidence when he went to Tampa Bay to lead that team. And he realizes Tampa Bay is his team, and he has weapons around him. And I get it. Some of the players are injured. Chris Godwin has his injuries. Mike Evans has had some injuries. And Emeka Egbuka is down with an injury right now. His offensive line has been shuffled left and right. But he has a play caller that trusts him. He has a defense that he can trust to lean on. And he's able to win football games. And Baker Mayfield, the biggest thing with the Browns was confidence. And being able to get that back was huge for him. Daniel Jones, the same thing. New York Giants, you didn't ever give him help. The receiving has been poor there for years. You only just recently got Malik Neighbors. You let Saquon Barkley walk for nothing. You don't invest in that. Your defense has been up and down all season long, and when Daniel Jones was there. It's a story if you don't give him any help and you want to blame him for your ineptitudes as a front office. Sam Darnold, the Jets. Every year it feels like they're hiring a new head coach. And that stability at the head coach position helps out quarterbacks and offensive coordinator as well. It comes down to the fact where front offices continue to blame the quarterbacks for their ineptitudes when it comes to drafting players to help the quarterbacks they originally drafted. Baker Mayfield didn't get it. Daniel Jones didn't get it. Sam Darnold didn't get it when he was at the Jets. And even when Sam Darnold was at the Panthers, the same with Baker Mayfield, no help for them. You trade away DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey, and they get no help.
Yeah, you brought up the Panthers and Bryce Young dealing with that still, with this poverty franchise. That is a popular thing to call it, the Browns. These are franchises, when we say that will look at something and say, oh, well, you got a year, and attach money to it. That year isn't good. You ship them, and then whenever you're in the negative in cap room and you're wondering why you can't go get big free agents, well, you didn't draft well, or you drafted well and let a good player walk. When you're doing those two things, you're not going to win as a small market team. I've said this before, all sports, you cannot rely on big name, big splash free agency. You got to win that draft. You got to go find your guys that fit your scheme. You got to develop them. development is still important, even in an NFL offense. I mean, look at how the Patriots sustained their dynasty. We talked about route running earlier. The Patriots were notorious for drafting receivers who may not be the biggest, may not be the most athletic, but they're going to get open. And they had a guy that got the football to him, and they developed offensive linemen, had 5 Pro Bowl offensive linemen in Tom Brady's career and several more that were on that level. I mean, they developed offensive linemen. That's how you win games. You find your guys and you develop them. You don't give up on them when they ask for a little more money than you're willing to pay, or the team's not doing good. Draft better, GMs. Jerry Jones.
And there's plenty of examples of quarterbacks struggling earlier in their career. Troy Aikman started out 0-11 as a rookie. Peyton Manning, the 28 interceptions as a rookie. Josh Allen was very inconsistent his rookie year and really his sophomore year. But they were able to grow. The coaches brought them help, even not with players, but with personnel, coaching staff-wise.
The Ravens is a dump right now, but you could even say Lamar Jackson. His downfield passing was terrible.
And they brought in Todd Monken, and he got way better. It seems like to me a lot of these front offices want to blame the players when maybe it comes down to coaching. And I think fans and front offices need to realize, is it easier to replace a head coach that maybe not as good, or is it easier to replace the quarterback or the defensive player you spent a first-round pick on? What's easier to swallow? And I think it's easier to swallow when you fire a head coach when you realize – so many examples of you get rid of Sam Darnold and you get rid of Baker Mayfield, and the head coach that had them, you figure out wasn't good as a head coach, and you realize, wow, I made the mistake there. I picked the wrong person to get rid of. So that's something people need to look out for is, was it really the quarterback's fault or was it the coaching's fault? And the examples we've gone over, Baker Mayfield, Daniel Jones, and Sam Darnold, really think it was a coaching fault.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I think it's definitely enough of teams not trusting the process. We've reached the end of our show here today at Full Court Blitz. We appreciate you for tagging along. Don't forget to listen to us and like, share. Listen next week. We'll be back for more on Full Court Blitz.